This is Thomas Aquinas' first way of proving the existence of God. This argument is interesting because it has a lot of misconceptions floating around that have just become urban legends almost. For one thing, it isn't about the beginning of the universe. It isn't about the creation of the universe. It isn't concerned with whether the universe is eternal or not. And in fact, it isn't even relevant to the argument. It works either way. It has nothing to do with the Big Bang or with a mover in the past. But to even understand it, we'll have to do a quick crash course in some of Aquinas' metaphysics. This is a really long topic with lots of terminology, but fortunately we only need a few tiny pieces. So the first thing we need to understand is the difference between accidentally ordered series and essentially ordered series. Accidental series are causal series that do not require each member to be in place for the end member to work. For instance, a father has a son. Even if the father dies, the son can have his own son, and so on. Previous causal members do not have to still be around for the end effect to take place. These types of series work throughout time, so they stretch from past to future. The other type is the essential series. These are causal series that require each member to be in place for the end member to work. So, for example, a chain of turning gears. Remove one gear from anywhere and the last gear won't turn. Or a freight train where each car pulls the next. This type of series is operative in the present, all happening right now. Now we need to know the difference between motion, or what Aquinas means by motion. He uses the term to mean any kind of change. So for change in substance, change in quantity, as well as actual motion. So this argument would also apply to water freezing as well as a body in motion. And potentiality and actuality. All physical objects have the potential to change, and when they do, they become actuality. So for instance, water has the potentiality of being ice, and when it becomes ice, it becomes actuality. Glass has the potential to become broken shards of glass, and when it does, then the potentiality becomes actuality. And anytime something moves from potential to actual, it requires an external force. So cold air acts on the water, and the water becomes potentiality to actuality, becoming ice. But also the air isn't cold to start with, because it's only potentially cold. To become actually cold, it must have a freezer parts operating on it. And from this, we can kind of segue right into the argument. It's essentially a chain of potentiality moving to actuality, which then actualizes something else, and so on and so on. So for example, a match only has the potential to ignite. To actually ignite, it requires a hand to strike it. But the hand only has the potential to move. To actually move, it requires muscles to flex it. But the muscles only have the potential to flex. To actually flex, they require motor neurons to fire. But the motor neurons firing only have the potential to fire, and to actually fire, they require electrons to move in the right way, and so on, deeper and deeper into reality. This is an example of an essential series. It's all happening right now, like a chain of turning gears. And each member, like a chain of gears, is motorless. Its only potential to move to actual it requires an external force acting on it. This series cannot go infinitely deep. One example of why not is because if you have a boxcar which doesn't have an engine, but you know it's moving, then you know it's being pulled by another boxcar. But you know that boxcar is not moving, or doesn't have an engine either, so it's being pulled by another boxcar. If this series goes on to infinity, then the whole train will just sit there and not actually do anything. So you know if it's moving that there must be an engine somewhere down the line. So what this means is essentially that the accidental series can stretch backwards to infinity. and Aquinas did not know if the universe was infinite or not. So an essential series, on the other hand, must terminate in an engine. Somewhere at the bottom there must be something causing the whole chain to move. And in this case, it would be something that is just actuality. If it were only potential, then it wouldn't actually be able to do anything, because to move from potential to actual, you need an external force, and so it wouldn't actually be the motor unless it were just actual. So this engine at the bottom of reality must have certain qualities. It must be non-physical, because if it were physical, it would only be potential, and it would require an external force, and so it wouldn't be the motor terminator. So it must also be pure actuality, because if it were only potential, then it wouldn't actually do anything. So in short, this is the unmoved mover, or unchanged changer. It can't change itself because it's already actual, but it can actualize the next member of the series. So it's not really a very godlike thing that we've reached now, but it's only one part of the puzzle. The other four proofs provide the other pieces. The second way gives a sustainer of the existence of everything. Third way gives a necessary being. The fourth gives a wholly good being. Fifth gives an intelligent being. And other divine attributes are derived from supplementary argumentation that Aquinas gives in several hundred pages. Some of the objections that have been raised against this one is that Newton's laws preclude the need for an unmoved mover, because, for instance, a body in motion tends to remain in motion. It's not being moved by anything. Some of the possible responses to this would be that it isn't clear that this describes change. A body in motion remaining in motion may actually just be a state, not actual change. Also, changes in acceleration, slowing down or speeding up, would still be affected by the argument. And also remember that motion refers to all change, so this doesn't affect changes in quality and quantity, even if it were a good objection. And another objection is that if the unmoved mover, it's maybe inert and stationary and thus can't do anything. But the possible responses to this would be that it would have to be incapable of moving from potential to actual, because it must not contain any potentiality and thus must be pure actuality. So being actuality, it is capable of moving or changing the next member of the series, and so it is, in fact, causally active. And that concludes Thomas Aquinas' First Way.